The challenge I have here with the Guyana Venezuela dispute is the middlemen. The middlemen are not negotiating this for peace, or the middlemen are not negotiating this in the best interest of the Guyanese people. This is a fight
Mm.
over oil, resources, gold, and to control strategic points in South America.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
when Trump tried to insert himself into Venezuela by trying to insert the mock leader called Juan Guaido, right? When when he did that, his aim was to put somebody in office who would be friendly to
Mhm. Mhm.
America so that they could have joint control over Guyana and Venezuela, right? So we have to be careful that the international string pullers are not putting Guyana and Venezuela to go to war
Go to
for
war.
their
So
own
that.
interests and not for the Venezuela or for the Guyanese people, right? So I don't support a dueling battle between two countries, especially two resource countries who could become beacons in the world. Venezuela is already a beacon in terms of providing uh, oil deals and other resources. A lot of countries borrow money from Venezuela, and Guyana
Mhm.
is on its way to that status,
Yeah.
right? So you don't need a war between the two of them. You need partnerships, right? But the problem here is that you have companies like ExxonMobil and you have corrupt politicians in Guyana who would sell out the interests of the country, right? And cause the fighting to be over the resources, right? So what the Guyanese people need to do, stand up for their rights, fight, claim their lands, yes. However, do not be led into a war on behalf of people who, when you then win the war, they're going to come in and try to dictate to your country what is supposed to happen with your oil, what is supposed to happen with your gold, and what is supposed to happen with your resources. Because as soon as if the United States help Guyana, as soon as you do not cooperate with what they want, you see regime change.
Mhm. Mhm.
And South America has been the country who had the most coups in the world outside of Africa, but US sponsored coups in the world. So
Mhm.
Guyana
Mm.
needs not to be fooled by these persons who are standing up. But you're glad for the support, but understand the reasons why these persons are standing up for you, and say to yourselves, if we didn't have this oil or we didn't have this, would these countries care about us? Would they care about representing the interests of Guyana? Would they care about calling
Mhm.
Guyana in to sit with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Because I remember full well that the Guyanese election results, David Granger won the election. I think I remember that. And it
Mhm.
was true, Mia Motley using the office of CARICOM, putting force on the Granger government and caused them to be toppled out to then
Mhm.
insert Ali. But Ali didn't win any election in Guyana. He didn't. And the facts are there,
LGBT.
right? So Mia Motley used her position as the chairman of CARICOM to intervene into the internal and domestic affairs of Guyana, to insert the Ali government into power because they were not democratically elected, right? And from
LGBT.
all back then, you could see the influence of these countries who were sending in their companies like ExxonMobil positioned to benefit from Guyana's oil riches because Barbados, and as you know, the Barbados the party always had a good relationship with the PPP government because a lot of Guyanese migrated into Barbados under the Owen Alpha period,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So He's just rekindling those relationships. So now you have Jack Dio, who was the president all that time back in power now. She's not rekindled the Guyanese connection, but my heart is saying to me that the reason me and Motley interfered, and even Oinafa went down to Guyana as well, he was one of the observers in the
Uh-huh.
Guyanese election. Him
Yes.
and Cynthia Barrow Gels, if you all remember that, right? And Barbados at the time, if my memory uh serves me correct, Barbados at the time was trying to position itself as the what you call the services center for Guyana. Right? Guyana was discussing having its own law school in Guyana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So there were a lot of things happening at the time, a lot of discussions happening at the time, but because of the election results, they then had to intervene to get a government that was more favorable to what they want. And I'm guessing the MP here, she could, I mean, I don't want to put her on the spot,
That's true.
but she
Mm-hmm.
could attest to some of what I'm saying.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you could put it on the screen. If you could put it on the screen here that we can see about the controversy surrounding the interference from Barbados in the
Yes.
Guyanese election. And at
Mm-hmm.
that time,
Yeah,
you
let
had
me look for it.
The Afro Guyanese hated the Barbados Prime Minister for what she did.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right? The Prime
Mm-hmm.
Minister went to Guyana and she got in a plane crash in Guyana and then lied about it. Right? They reported
Mm-hmm.
that she was in a
Yes.
plane crash in Guyana and they denied it. But the
Mm-hmm.
people down there saw and know exactly what happened and they spoke about it. So
As
there's a lot going on as it relates to Guyana. And it is my opinion that the Barbados Prime Minister, in association with the United States and other world leaders, is putting Mia Motley, who seems to be the go-to person for the international community, to keep a handle on what happens in Guyana because they are going to use her to protect their interests in Guyana, right? Because from time you could use your position as a leader at CARICOM to step over your boundaries to
mm-hmm.
intervene in a country's eternal election. That
Mm-hmm.
says a lot. CARICOM
Mm-hmm.
has no power to do such things. So
Wow.
you could
That
clearly
is,
see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
and she said
Mm-hmm.
here she's saying the truth hurts. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
that, and I remember Guyanese contacted me, even Guyanese in Barbados contacted me, and they were very, very upset. I remember
Yep.
seeing one of them at a church, and they were very upset but afraid to talk about it. And they said,
Mm-hmm.
"Can you believe? We can't believe that Mia Martley would do this without
Mm-hmm.
understanding what is happening in Guyana." But she sided with this the PPP government and put her
Mm-hmm.
mouth involved in it. And what Kemar is saying is not far off, because what and look at what is happening now. Look at what is happening now. Really, is this something that they planned to make sure that this is the government that was in?
Right, there were serious allegations at the time where they were saying that the U.S. officials on the ground wanted to set up something like camps in using Guyana and to set up basically a propaganda mission to remove Maduro. So it's been alleged that the United States pressured Mr. Granger to allow them to use Guyana as a launch pad into Venezuela. So when he didn't cooperate, then they put pressure to put a government that would then allow things like that to happen. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember, Venezuela is heavily supported by Russia. So when they went to invade Venezuela, the US, Putin sent some of his fighter jets to park on the Venezuelan runway. And all of a sudden, they didn't have any more issues with Venezuela. We still need to understand that Barbados is seeking to, or Myanmar is trying to become the United Nations Secretary General. So
Oh,
she's not going to cross Venezuela because she wants the Caribbean oil. Barbados now appointed Aquinas Clark to be ambassador and the potentiary to Venezuela. Just the other day, right? And Barbados through David Commission, who has always been a pro-Venezuelan. They know what they're in bed with Venezuela with, Barbados, right?
mhm, mhm.
And
That is
Russia
why.
has a veto power at the United Nations. So therefore, Mia Motley will not do or say anything to cross those people who has the veto powers to block her from becoming United UN Secretary General.
All of this is about personal gains. It's not about the people. It's not about the well-being of the CARICOM states. It's all about me as a person and what I can achieve and where I can go. It's not about the will of the Caribbean people. And like you rightfully said, during our elections, they came here and Mr. Granger said to them, look, I don't want to be, well, it's alleged that he said he didn't want to be appointed under all the kinds of circumstances. And they agreed to have a recount. They agreed to have a recount. And there were several steps in that entire process. But you know what? When they reached step 3, they abandoned the entire process and the PPP government were installed. And that is why Guyanese are so angry and they're so upset. And I can say this again. Prime Minister Mia Mortley came and she got involved in our internal politics. But when we got issues with Venezuela now, she taking a standoff attitude, and Venezuela has always been a sister to Barbados. So who is Guyana? Why did you come here? Why are you intervening in our issues if we're not a sister to you? So the whole thing again is about those who can be in the elite group and how high you can climb in that group to the sufferings of the masses.
Yes. Venezuela recently, you know that Venezuela actually honored Mia Motley with one of the highest orders as of recent. And you can search that, you can
No,
find that.
you sure? I
Yes,
thought it
they
was
did.
Guyana that honored her.
No,
No,
that was 2016.
Venezuela.
Honored in 2016 in Guyana. But she was recently honored in Venezuela.
She was honored with one of the
What you
highest
telling
orders
me?
of
What
Venezuela.
are you telling me?
You can
No,
you
the,
can
the
find
plot
it. You can put
thickens
it on the
on the
screen.
plot. This lady, oh no, this woman is something else. I am telling you, Guyana, be careful with this woman. Be careful
Mhm.
because she don't forget about that elections. Don't
We will
forget
not forget
what the
that. We
role
will
of
not
Mia
forget.
Motley in your elections. Don't forget. And look at what is happening now. Was this well orchestrated for this day? Did they put the people in? Is this really about US and Venezuela? And what is this woman wants? Why she is like in Jamaica, we said that she playing booty. She better be careful.
When Trinidad were having their elections and the Caribbean team wanted to go in there, he said, no, none of y'all not coming here because this in Guyana, this is Trinidad. None of y'all coming here. He blocked all those observers who wanted to go there to come and put on badges and all kind of things. And that's why I said, Mia Mortley came here to Guyana. Ralph Gonzalez came here to Guyana. You had Owen Arthur was here. All of them were here doing all sorts of things. Rowley was here, but you didn't see Rowley playing the kind of role that Mia Mortley and all of them played here. And so this whole thing is about who can do for me and who can't do for me. And if you can't do for me, then I will do whatever I have to do to put you where you have to be so that I can have things being done for me. At the end of the day, the people, the masses of the people are the ones who are left to suffer. With all of those public servants who have been not retrenched, they've been dismissed from their jobs. Hundreds of Guyanese are being dismissed, the majority of them Afro-Guyanese. Not a word from Prime Minister Mia Mortley, not a word from Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, not a word from anybody, and those people are now left out there to suffer. They got to go and find some next job somewhere, as we would call it, because they can't be employed with the government in any government jobs. They got to go and find other things to do. As a matter of, let me say to you, there are some persons who are employed by the PPP, but under the coalition government, they were allowed to go overseas to further their studies and so on. And when the PPP government returned to office after they were installed, even those persons that they employed then, they were fired by them. And so this is not an easy grouping of people that we're dealing with. These people are heartless, and they don't care who they have to mash and trample upon to get where they have to be once they get there.
And it seemed to me that, yeah, this woman is moving, and she is moving, and whoever she's trampling, that's my take on it. And Kemar, what an excellent analysis, Kemar, that you have put here. You know, Mr. Franklin, when you think about it, is that she is like walking like Hulk and just crushing and crushing, and whoever she crushes. And I remember my Guyanese people, because I'm close to my Guyanese people, they would call me. I had Rickford Burke on this show, and he was complaining, and nobody was listening to him about what Mia Martley was doing to the Afro-Guyanese in Guyana, in interfering with the politics, and they put who they wanted there because of the oil. That's what they did.
But the relationship at the top of Guyana and Barbados is LGBT.
But you know, it's quite crazy. And you know, we talk about allowing persons their space, and you don't want to discriminate because of people's personal preferences. But these same preferences got a lot. It has lots and lots of negative impact on the lives of people in our country. But let me say to you, in our schools, we're finding out in our schools that we have so many students who are liking other students of the same kind, the same sex. Lots of it happening in our school system. And so this cannot be something that is just popping up overnight. It is coming from somewhere. And freedom of speech and freedom of association and freedom to do what you want. And so these are some of the results that we're having. And you know, like you were saying, the LGBT, you know, it is so pronounced almost every.
And it's at the top, and it's if it's in the leadership, of these countries, if our leaders are leaning towards those kinds of things, then obviously it's something that they're going to support, and it's going to trickle down. But I think I heard Kemar's voice. Go ahead, Kemar.
When it was time for Barbados to sign the Petra-Caribbean deal with Venezuela recently, they sent Carrie
Yes.
Simmons on vacation, and Jerome Walker signed the deal. He was returned as the acting foreign minister to sign that deal. What that is what we have.
Anybody, you're reading through this, you understand what we're talking about here. This is some serious stuff that is happening here. And Kemar, you just came in and turn this thing in this way. No, this is something else. And this is her receiving a very prestigious honor there in Venezuela in July 2023. And remember that Granger gave her one of the highest honors in Guyana. And by the time of the election and the oil came, and she saw the chiching, and everything turned, and she turned, you know, the Guyanese are believing that she turned on you guys. Wow. I know we wanted you to go, but this is rather interesting. Wouldn't you say, Honorable McDonald? You didn't say it. Somebody else said it.
Very, very interesting. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I have just been poking, and I've not been saying exactly what it is, but it's actually coming out. And I'm hoping that our Bajan brothers and sisters, they are reading through the lines, and that our Guyanese all over the world who are watching, that they are understanding fully what is happening in between these two countries and what is happening in Guyana. I hope that they're watching and they're getting the picture very, very clear that this is not about the ordinary Guyanese people or the ordinary Bajans, but it's about the leaders who we have there who are making these kinds of decisions and creating the kinds of confusion.
This is quite interesting what is happening now. We have our ambassador to CARICOM is David Commission, and I don't know if you know, David Commission is related to Mia Motley, and he's a big Venezuelan advocate. He stands strong for Venezuela, so it's quite interesting now, Kemar, to know what will be his stance at this point.
The Prime Minister has dibs on this one, so he has to sit down, sit in the back. Right? This is a little above
Mhm.
his pay grade.
We need to really need to pray for Guyana and pray about the situation
Yeah.
and pray for our prime minister.
It's all about money. Look at the people who can go and sit down with Jack Dio and get fancy contracts. You remember? Then when the people did the little thing and had him, and he said, "Here the people talking about." They had him videotaped and recorded. It is all about money for yourselves. You see, we don't have a lot of politicians with a lot of integrity anymore. You see, I tell people in Barbados, and they laugh at me, and I tell them, but in next 20 or so years, they will recognize that Burnham was a hero in Guyana, right? Burnham had Guyana on the trajectory where, and you will see it, where when you want to go to university in Guyana, you had to learn, you had to get involved. Before you go to university, you had to do national service.
No surface, yes.
And that national service, you learn two trades. A lot of those people came to Barbados, and you had two fellows from Guyana. One is a carpenter and a plumber, and one is a mason and something else, an electrician, and the two of them build houses. I see, Burnham did that, but people only saw that you couldn't get English apples, that ain't good for you, and that kind of nonsense, you know. And I'm not recognizing, but Burnham was trying to teach them how to rely on themselves. And at one stage, Parliament WHO said that the Guyanese people were the healthiest people in the Caribbean because they were eating their own stuff, not all these chemicals, preservatives, and stuff. But people still want to demonize Burnham, but Burnham was on the right path. And I don't know if they kill him and they take out his tonsils, but I suspect that's what happened.
Let me tell you what happened recently while we were gearing up to December 3rd. All the national songs that the PPP did not want to have being played on the radios, and they have not had the children singing those national songs in schools. Well, let me tell you, all of those national songs resurrected, and we were having national songs being played every day. We were having them being sung in school. On the 1st of December, we had all children across Guyana. They were singing national songs. They were reciting our pledge. They were reciting the national motto. And so the very fabric that you tried to destroy was the very fabric you had to now take to mend up together to put on and make clothing to cover yourself. And so when you try to dismiss and destroy Burnham, here is it. Burnham was alive and well again in all of Guyana over the last week.
But Burnham came from Barbados. You know that. His parents. You know that? Burnham's family was from Belplain and St. Andrew. He's first generation Guyanese. I remember when they were having the problems down there, the deputy prime minister of Barbados said, "Oh Lord, if anything happens and Burnham come to Barbados, we can't even tell you no come because you write the citizenship by descent." So we had good connections.
Yeah.
Barra, Burnham,
Eric Williams.
Bird, Eric Williams, Trevor Montserrat, Bramble, Bradshaw, and St. Kitts. those people were not only leaders of their country. They saw the region as one place, and they tried. They started with Corretta and then carried come. Now we are looking now at who is LGBT showing in support. This was happening here, you know. This was happening in Guyana, and nobody but me won't say. But I can say,
Caswell, I've said for a long time that the entire economic global push across the world, that the helm of it is the LGBTQ2 plus agenda. Everything else falls under that. And that is being made clear with every single agreement that is being brought forward and signed by every global government. And I've been saying this for the last several months in different forums, that at the end of the day, whenever you come into an agreement with anything on the global community, enshrined within that are the matters of sexual, gender, identity, as and the persons, and I've said it before, and I will say it again. The leader globally on this is Joe Biden and the United States government, and that is clear. It was a consensus opinion in the United Nations, and the European Union has now taken it and is running with it now on that Samoa agreement that we have just signed on to. And that is the bottom line with this entire process. People don't think we are serious about it when we speak to
Yeah.
it.
Well, you say something about Joe Biden, right? So I wanted to read a particular article here from 2017 when the
Mm-hmm,
Granger government was in, when they
mm-hmm,
initially struck the oil deal with ExxonMobil. It says here that ExxonMobil and its partners will pay Guyana a 2% royalty on all oil extracted from offshore oil wells in Guyana, in addition to sharing 50% of net profits. And this is the profits declared after the initial investments would have been repaid from the earnings, right? And it says that the Guyanese government, through the Ministry of Natural Resources, confirmed that a production license was issued to ExxonMobil. One of the requirements before the developers, which was one of the requirements before the developers made a decision on the oil project in 2017. The interesting thing about this article here is that it says that the production license, according to a ministry statement, will move ahead in 2020. Right? Ms. McDonald could tell us the year that the Guyanese election was held.
2020.
Right? So Exxon started to drill and produce the oil from 2020, and the Guyanese election was held in 2020. Now, the Ministry of Natural Resources in Guyana put out the notice that all of the production of oil was to happen from 2020. So you see why they would have done what they did to get who they wanted to oversee the issuing of the oil spoils, right? Now, the Jagdeo and Ali was, by the way, listen to Glenn Lau, by the way. I'm a big fan of Glenn Lau. And
Okay.
from listening to what he was saying, and from doing my own research, they were arguing that they wanted to renegotiate the contracts for the oil to move the percentage from 2% of the royalty up onto 10% of the royalty. But if you read the Financial Times and the Reuters and all the international medias, they were saying that the Guyanese ordeal was the best ordeal ever in the history of ordeals, right? And the PPP came to power promising the Guyanese people that they were going to renegotiate those contracts. Recently, the information reaching me is
They're
that
not doing.
when it came time to renegotiate the contracts, they changed their mouths on it, right? So they sold misinformation to the Guyanese people about what they can and cannot have as it relates to benefiting from their own oil, right? Because the ExxonMobil, from the look of it, is paying out bonuses to people and all types of people mixed up seemingly with the government and the corruption that started happening. We know Guyana was one of the most, and this is not my information, so don't go and say that I anti PPP or anti speaking facts here. When it comes to corruption, Guyana was one of the worst countries in the Caribbean as it
Mm-hmm.
related to
That's correct.
corruption
That's
in public
correct.
office.
That's
Mm-hmm.
correct. That's statistically
And that was
accurate.
under the good, and that was under Jack Deo when he was president. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not my feeling towards it. That is a fact,
That is
right?
fact.
So now that you have a government in Barbados who have some very similar and corrupt tendencies, right? What they said, two peas in the pod. So you see, based off the information that was coming out from Exxon and the Ranger government at the time, that the oil production from Exxon was to happen in 2020. Again, this election happened in 2020. Granger won the government, and it was Barbados who intervened to remove that government to put another government in place to have the responsibility for overseeing this oil. And you can just go and read the Guyanese news right now and see exactly what's happening as it relates to the government doing the right thing.
Coming out of our elections in 2020, when we had the recount, that recount showed how many persons who were dead voted. It showed how many persons who were out of Guyana voted. And the immigration records were there to prove that these people were nowhere in Guyana during the time of elections. You had the registration of births and deaths office. It had all the documentation there to show you all of these persons who were names were ticked there and would have voted that they are dead. And you had death certificates to prove that. But Mia Mortley and the others, they encouraged the lawlessness to happen. At that recount, I was one of the agents for the coalition. I sat in one of those booths for 30 days. And coming to my booth, there were several boxes with ballots where you had no statutory documents. You hadn't persons with their, you hadn't their ID cards. You hadn't no the ballots that was there. They had no stubs. You hadn't numbers that were coinciding to reconcile. All of these things came out in that recount, but yet the PPP were installed. And that's why I said there was 5 steps to that entire process. 3 steps were upheld, and the other 2, those were thrown out through the door. And so it's corruption upon corruption and the return of more corruption. And that's what some people like.
This marriage that is happening, that has happened between Barbados and Guyana, and we're about to see them have a child. We're about to see this child that they whatever happened in that election, we're about
No.
to see it. I
Gay,
know what you're
gay
gonna say.
marriage, no child. Gay marriage, no child. Doesn't happen.
We are sisters and we are brothers here. Not the sister we heard that Venezuela is. Venezuela is a sister of Barbados. We are sisters and brothers here, and we've got to keep this going. And because our people must know what is happening here. The relationship that we're having, the relationship that we're having with our leaders, what they're encouraging, and those who cannot call out others when they're doing the wrong things. We have to let people know. And until persons are aware of what is happening, they're not going to be able to make very, very sound decisions, because persons will say, oh, I see the PPP doing a lot of things, lots of development in Guyana, but who's benefiting from it? Just a chosen few. Could you imagine that a couple of months ago, our Minister of Labor announced here that they were going to import truck drivers into Guyana? Could you imagine that? They were going to import persons to drive trucks in Guyana. And I had to respond to that, because I'm saying, what happened to our people here? Our people don't know to drive trucks.
Miss
And if they don't know, what
Miss
are we doing
McDonald,
with those monies that are being passed at Parliament? Huh? You're crazy? I
Miss
hear you.
McDonald, I think you, here. I mean, you need to be more vocal as to telling the Barbadians exactly what happened in Guyana as it relates to the political affairs in the country. The APNU, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the APNU AFC coalition was the governing party at the time. And they had a vote in parliament. I think it was a no confidence vote.
In
And
20.
the government at the time was voted against by one of its own people. And
Yeah.
his name was Sharon Das Prasad.
Sharon
And
Das
he
was
was
up.
an Indo Guyanese, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sharon Das Prasad sold out the government and voted against the government. And then he fled the country to Canada,
And
right?
he was later
So,
made, and he was later made High Commissioner to India by the PPP government. Yes, as a matter of fact, he stood up during the budget presentation and abused out the PPP who were in opposition then. He abused them when they were in government, what they did. And a couple mornings later on, he voted with the PPP against his own government. And he was taken to Canada. He fled to Canada and later returned after 2020 elections. He returned to Guyana and was made a high commissioner from Guyana to India. So he moved to India. But you know what? He did not last long there because when you're corrupt and when you're lawless, wherever you go, you can only hold that in for a little bit. So he went there and he went and abused the women over there. And you know what? They hid that. So after a whole year, we didn't know anything. After a whole year, somebody leaked it out. And when we put pressure on them, he was recalled. We have the same issue with our commissioner of
right,
police,
sorry,
and this
you
is
go
what the
ahead, you go
PPP
ahead.
do all the time. They have commissioner of police who they put it aside, and so when they retire, they rehire them. So they give them extension. While the younger ones who are there with the aim of coming up to becoming commissioner, you can't come because the retired has been rehired.
Look, you're talking about Barbados or Guyana. The same thing
I'm
Guyana,
happen
here.
here.
I'm here
The,
trying to figure
Guyana.
it out. I'm here trying to.
the same thing happens
I
here.
think she has the wrong flag hanging behind her. I
You
think
know,
she has the wrong.
I tell you, they're using the same playbook. They're using the
You know?
same playbook. You remember when both
Yeah.
Williams and Doughton over 67 end up being on contract, get extensions contrary to the law because the law don't allow them to go past 67 at the event.
Outside of that, we have lots of public servants, public service appointments that are no longer permanent staff, but they are contracted persons. You bring persons from all over and you give them huge contracts. And so they work there. So you stymie the people who you think are not in support of you, and you bring your people there, you put them on contract.
The comptroller of customs in Barbados is on contract. The chief education officer is on contract. They wanted
We
to
got
put the principals on contract. The same playbook. Better open your eyes and see the corruption. This I knew this sophisticated thing was too good for Motley. She copying it. She copying it from Guyana. And you have no, if you look into the public service, I could put my hand in my bag and pull out the Public Service Act. All jobs in the public service must be advertised and they got to go through the commission. And she hiring people left, right, and center, chief of protocol, one that just order, and the premises office. She doesn't have authority to do that. But $12,500 later, she is a chief of protocol, which is a public service job. So the same things that are happening in Guyana happen in Barbados. The Honorable Corretta, I'm grateful that you come here because if the eyes don't open now, they will remain shut. And everything
I
happened.
agree. I
Chief of
agree.
Staff of the
Wow.
Defense Force, Chief of Staff of Defense Force, a retired man is back, went to Parliament and changed the law so that he could come back to as Chief of Staff. The same things are happening. So you
Well,
don't know if
Well, our chief of staff, he resigned from the Guyana Defense Force, and a few years later, he was pulled right back into the Guyana. It's the same wheel plane in one territory, and then it rolls over into another territory, and we keep the wheels rolling like that because we want to be there, and we're all about control.
Is it Kemar?
Yes,
Is it
yes.
Exxon that is doing
Well,
the oil exploration here in Barbados? Is it Exxon?
No, it's BHP.
BHP? Okay.
Yeah, the Australian
mhm.
company. The last point I left off was the Sharandas Prasad point, which highlights that corruption is rife. Which I mean,
Yeah.
I suspect that he has been paid out. He has been paid out by some big rich government or some rich company or so to vote against his government, and he actually toppled his own government. And what's surprising is that people, and with the racial tensions in Guyana, people will say the PPP is the Indo Guyanese party, and the ACNU and the coalition is more pro black, right? And Sharandas Prasad being the Indo Guyanese voting against the Granger government, the optics just look wrong, right? So he can do that, vote against his own government in a no confidence vote, and then he could be given a reward as an ambassador. That sounds like when Tony Moore sold out the unions in Barbados, and she, as a union leader, is now a member of parliament and still the head of the union. We're not too different. We're really brothers and sisters in the Caribbean together,
And
because
corruption.
all of these governments just seem to be corrupt and rife for corruption. Don't matter which Caribbean country you're good at. It's just like being black in
Like
the
the planet
Caribbean.
that CARICOM, like the planet that CARICOM. But when your eyes are open, then you have to march. Then you have to protest. Then you have to get out there and let people see that we don't enjoy the corruption that you're out there practicing. We don't want it. But if you sit down and shut up, it will flourish. We got to stop it. Even our little marches here, they took notice. So if we get more people, we get greater numbers out there telling the government, because elections about votes, and you
Numbers.
want to make sure the numbers, yes, thank you, you want those numbers. So if the politicians see numbers out there telling them that we are not happy, they will respond. If you don't turn out, they will say, the boy paying in the mind, a French group.
But you know what they do, because they politicize the police force. They send the police out there to hung you down and to lock you up and to harass the citizens. That's what they do in my country. Before, when the coalition was in office, persons could have come on the streets and protest for long, long hours. But the PPP being installed again, you persons are scared to do that. As a matter of fact, public servants don't even want to speak to you, speak to me sometimes as an opposition MP, because they're fearful that somebody will see them and tomorrow they lose their jobs. So that's the kind of fear they instill in the populace, where you can't. It's not okay for you to assemble and organize and associate with persons. You go out there and quick time, when there's a crime happening, you can't find the police. But as soon as a group of people assemble out there with some placards and so, you see the police right out there, they're waiting. And you know what they do? You know what they do first? They try to get the leader of the protest action and hold on to that person. So when you hold on to the leader, then you know what happened to everybody else. Everybody else gets scared.
Disperse.
People don't want to come out, and that's what they do. So while people are upset with what is happening, they are scared to come out there to say how they feel. Lots and lots of the PPP supporters, I can tell you, they are upset with what they're doing, what their government, the people who they voted for, what they're doing, but they are fearful of coming out there to say things and to put stuff on social media, because they know tomorrow morning they're going to be out of a job. Their contracts are going to be brought to an end. Their homes might go up in flames. So those are the kinds of fear that they instill in people here. And so people are fearful. But let me tell you what, that change is coming. Because right now, as we speak, we had just recently a damning allegation made against one of the ministers of government, Nigel Dharamlal, where an Amerindian girl or an indigenous girl said
15
Yeah.
years old.
rape
It
and
is an
sodomized
allegation.
her.
I saw the video. So it's an allegation. It's a
And
fact.
you know
I
what?
saw
You
the
know what
video.
happened? The minister was there still performing his duties. And then the minister came out and said to this nation, oh, as a matter of fact, the president said, the minister called him and said, look, I will go, and I will proceed on leave so that an investigation could be had. And what do you think happened? Even the police were used. Could you imagine a commander going out there to write statements for a young lady or allowing a young lady to write statements? And so we had this big back and forth. And when all the protest actions were held in this country, it all boiled down to a young lady coming out there to say, I am the young lady, and nothing of the sort happened. But the very young lady went to the home where she said the act was committed. She took the police there, they took her there. And when she got to the home, she said, they asked her if this was the home. She said yes. She was taken upstairs. Her brother was left downstairs. The television was turned up in the room that they were in. Well, the first thing she said is when she got there, she said, the place wasn't this color, it's repainted. The place is now repainted. Oh, the furnishing weren't like this. Some have been removed and they rearranged them. And then the young lady came out after to say nothing of the sort happened. That young lady, she was isolated from everybody, from her parents, from lawyers who wanted to talk to her, and she had government persons there who were instilling in her fear all the time. They took her to the child care center, one of the child care centers they took her to. And they had her repeating this thing over and over and over and over again. They're questioning this little child. Now, this young girl has been traumatized. And over, you're asking her to repeat what she said. And she wasn't saying anything different. She was saying the same story she was relating all the time. And it got to a point where the young lady said, I am tired. I don't want to answer questions anymore. I don't want to hear anything. When they learned that this young lady had a cell phone and she was making contact outside with persons on the outside, you know what happened? They seized her phone and they seized every other phone for the little girls who were in there. All the phones were seized so she could make contact with no one. So here it is. You have a little girl who was taken away from her home, isolated in another environment, and she couldn't make contact with the outside world. But you know what?
Wow.
Minister Darrell is now walking the streets and parading himself all over the place. As a matter of fact, I learned recently that he is still occupying the minister's quarters that he was living in. And he still has access to the vehicles that were allotted to him when he was minister. That's the kind of lawlessness we have in this country. You know what? And
Yeah. Yeah.
not a word again from any of the CARICOM leaders. Well, I guess they don't want to intervene in Guyana's internal politics.
There was a minister in Antigua who was in the Gaston Brown cabinet, and he was charged for rape. And Gaston Brown kicked him out to the cabinet one time. Boof.
Not
Locally,
not
we had a situation, right? What our leader did was to try to remove a sitting deputy speaker of the House. But Caswell know the House rules better, right? So he could tell you that the guy would have had to resign. However, our Prime Minister just came and announced that Cynthia Ford would have been taking up the position, but it does not work like that.
You have a 2/3 majority to remove him, or he has to resign.
Good.
And the rest don't want to go and vote against it, even though they got the 2/3 majority, because there's more in the mortar than the pestle.
There's a reason why many of them wouldn't want to vote, because there's a whole list of them that the Prime Minister is about to kick them out, to get rid of all of them and replace them with new candidates. I can't tell you the last time we've seen our Attorney General, Dale Marshall, He is no MIA.
Wow.
And I saw a poster coming out today on social media which says missing persons report, missing in action. And it had a picture of our Attorney General. And it said, F scene, please call MIA at 246 MIA. 246 million, right? But it's a serious thing. But our General is missing from the politics of Barbados. One, because he is set to be replaced by a much younger candidate. And two, the Prime Minister appointed a Minister for Crime, what we call the Crime Minister in Barbados. And that
Okay.
Prime Minister cuts across the responsibilities of the Attorney General. Although the appointed person is
Mm.
not an attorney, it cuts across his responsibilities. And from all reports, he is fuming, 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 angry that he
Wow.
is now taking himself out of the frontline politics and drifting off in the background, probably on his yacht, smoking cigars or so, enjoying his impending retirement that's coming.
He is the Attorney General. So not him not being in action is not a bad thing, because if he's Attorney General and he does not know that there is no such thing in our law as a junior minister to a minister, he deserves to be treated that way.
Yeah.
Our constitution does not provide for it. It says that if the minister needs assistance in the ministry, he will be given a parliamentary secretary. But you take a full minister, again, the same pay, the same minister, and it does not work. So if he is Attorney General and he cannot tell the Prime Minister, you can't do that, he has no useful purpose to be in the government of Barbados. You should go and go now.
Well, from all reports, we are seeing that he's about to be replaced as the candidate for the government in the parish of St. Joseph. He, along with some others. So we're also hearing some serious reports that one of the members of Parliament, Ralph Karn, is set to leave the sitting government across the floor to become the opposition leader,
Wow.
right? Because if
Kemar, I hear there are 12. I hear there
whoa,
are 12 persons,
whoa,
not just one, 12 persons.
well,
Mm.
I have
well,
some names here. I have some names. They're alleging that these people, Peter Phillips, Trevor Prescott, Cynthia Ford, Dale Marshall, Dwight Sutherland, Ralph Thorne, Sonia Brown, William Dugood, as I call him Dubad, Neil Rowe, Christopher Gibbs, Davison Ishmael, Adrian Ford, right? So this is what I'm hearing, and that now that they've started the process of the by-election for to remove Cynthia Ford and Dale Marshall.
Do not believe all those names. You see, I can tell you why. You need 8 years to qualify for a pension, and it is all about their pensions. So unless we're kicking them out, them are going nowhere, they're holding on for a pension. That is what
But
governs their actions in Barbados right now. If you have to hold on for a little bit longer, you hold on till you get your 8 years. So anybody above 8 years, I might believe, but not the rest, like Davis and Ishmael, those fellas. Them are going nowhere. If they're going nowhere, it is that they're getting kicked out. But no, if you remain in the Senate, you still get your pension. So the 3.5 years in the House plus this the time now in the Senate will qualify him for a pension, because he's, even if he were the minister sitting in the Senate, they twisted up the laws so that they can qualify for pension. So each time they didn't qualify for pension, they changed the law to make themselves qualify. So Senate service now is also pensionable service if you were in the House. And if you're a minister, it is then pensionable anyhow. So he's still in business.
it was
If
said,
you
and I saw some videos with the Attorney General. I think he was standing next to this gentleman here, and I think he was showing him around St. Joseph and some other stuff like that. I think this guy also was doing some construction work on the Hillcrest facilities in St. Joseph as well. and they're saying that this guy is already on the road, uh, meeting the people, and is set to be the replacement for the Attorney General, who we have not seen in umpteen years. And this is a man
Wow.
who loves to talk, who loves to be upfront, expounding upon his knowledge of the law. uh, so something is definitely up.
At least one of them don't know the law.
Well, if they appointed Mr. McDonald, they appointed two commissioners of police when the law only allowed for one.
Two
They came
deputies,
to the people,
two deputies,
two
two
right,
deputies.
two deputy commissioners of police when the law only accounted for one. They
Wow.
came and said that the law already provided to have two, right? Then pressure was put on them. They then came back and brought the legislation to then accommodate for two,
Mm.
right? So you see the levels of corruption that we share
Well,
in
well,
both
we
Guyana.
we share some of those same ones too, where they are changing the laws because they have a one seat majority. They are bringing so many amendments to fit their purpose. So it's a whole lot of corruption. Again, more corruption, in corruption, and everybody in the corruption business. Once you're part of the PPP, that's it. Corruption, more monies. We have here in our country where ministers, father-in-laws have suddenly become contractors. So they're getting huge contracts. You've never seen them anywhere before, but they become overnight contractors and they are winning contracts. You got allegations of the president's wife, her cousins are getting contracts. All of a sudden they become contractors. Somebody's brother-in-law getting contracts. All of a sudden, everybody within the PPP are contractors, so they're winning all these contract bids. And persons are saying, "What is happening? We are all tendering. What happened? We don't qualify for any one of these contract awards. With all these tenders, only a certain group of people." And what you're seeing, you might see a Corretta McDonald, a Corretta McDonald, a Corretta McDonald, Corretta McDonald winning 3 contracts when you would have had a tender bid opening and hundreds of persons are tendering for these contracts. But Corretta McDonald winning 3, another person winning 3, another person winning another 3, and everybody else on the outskirts, they can't even win one. But only a certain group of people winning all these contracts.
A minister's wife was the head of the hospital and given preferential treatment and creating a whole position to give to a minister's wife to run the hospital into the ground.
Caswell, you know that crossing the Florida is not necessarily activated by election. I mean, we've seen that happen before.
No, it doesn't. You see,
It does
but in
not
the next
activate.
election, you're gonna win. That's the problem. You see, like for instance, Davidson Ishmael. He's a first time candidate. He just took over from Ronald Topping. Let's say he served out this term 5 years. He will now have to contest that election. And 9 chances out of 10, not being a Barbados Labour Party member and supporter anymore, and not being a Dem, he will come at the best third. So not necessarily will cause a by-election. I know it wouldn't cause a by-election, but the next election, he ain't getting in there. The fellows who already have a term in office, 3 years or 3.5 years or whatever the case may be, then they can go and serve this second term now and get their pensions in opposition. But I'm talking about the people who are newcomers. They're not going nowhere. I saw the question the fellow was asking there just now too, and I was going to respond to it. They're not going anywhere. I know their selfishness. I know their greed. That is why they get their pensions at age 50, 50, and they take everybody else to 68. You think these people sweet?
Well, Casper, if you see a Ralph Thorne though, I would believe that because Ralph Thorne gave some biting speeches in the
Yes,
Parliament
No,
of
no, no,
Barbados
yes,
no.
against
yes. Very
Ralph Thorne is
recently,
different. Ralph Thorne is
very
different.
recently.
He is not going to be dependent
and they're
on
trying to kick him out to his seat.
right. He is not going to be dependent on a parliamentary pension. He is very well off. Okay,
Mhm.
so he is one of the people who can stand on his own. So the
Mhm.
he is the exception. So, but some of these other people you know nothing about. Ralph is a very good attorney. My mom, he was down in Guyana, during the court case.
But isn't he
For
the attorney? Isn't he the attorney for the what's the name of the
opposition.
guy? No, the one that was accused with Motley's brother's death. Isn't he his attorney?
Sahi
Yes,
Griffith.
yes, yeah,
Yes,
he is the attorney for the guy who they're
the
clearing.
coroner. He's the attorney for the
Right.
coroner.
Ralph is
You know,
also Nero's attorney. If you remember the video that was circulating with the Prime Minister cursing off the people saying that under no circumstances, if Michael
Michael
Lashley
Ashley.
represent Nero, that he can't get a cent from them and he will not run as a candidate again. And then we see she had a problem with Ralph representing because she said Ralph went into a courtroom to try a criminal case. And now we are seeing Ralph basically going against the wishes of the Prime Minister in terms of representing um, their own colleagues who's having a legal challenge.
You know, it is the same playbook. So I think we understand that, right, madam? We understand, and Reverend, understand it's one playbook. The next thing is what Dr. Ferdinand Nichols said about the LGBTQ agenda, and we're back at this again, and it's not because we just want to talk about it. The point is that, and it's not the people, madam, it's the agenda. There is an
Yep.
agenda, and they
That's
are
it.
pushing
That's
a
it.
certain thing, and the people that are behind it are very evil, very evil. The agenda, because when you look at some of the leadership of this country, of these countries, some of our top leaders are involved in that kind of lifestyle, and they have handpicked to push an agenda, okay, which is separate from the people themselves. And I think that that is important. God bless you all. We love you. Bye bye. God bless. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a good
Right.
night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.